Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the next lecture of English literature. Hope you all are doing great and completed your previous work up till now. If you face any difficulty regarding anything related to the lecture, feel free to contact me in the group or in person, as you feel convenient. I will further explain that particular thing to you, inshallah. In the last lecture, we have discussed about the character of Antonio, Bassanio, Portia, Gratiano, and Nerissa. So we will start our session with the detail of remaining characters, and the topics of today's session are characters. We will discuss the leftover characters, and we will talk on the themes of the Merchant of Venice in this lecture. The first character that we are going to take start with is of Balthazar. Balthazar is Portia's servant who helps her obtain the disguise. Her servant Balthazar brings letters of introduction and clothing for Portia to gain admission to court in Venice from her cousin Dr. Bilario. She uses those things to pose as a man and defend Antonio in court. She also uses Balthazar's name while in disguise. Shylock. Shylock is confined. He is restrained by the laws of limiting Jews in Venice, participation in Venetian society, and is subject to prejudice, is subject to partiality and scorn, hatred. He bears a special grudge against Antonio. The reason for that grudge is because Antonio has mistreated him and interfered with his business in the past. When Antonio comes to borrow money from Shylock, Antonio accepts Shylock's demand that a pound of Antonio's own flesh be used as collateral, as a security. Shylock accepts the bond and lends the money. When Antonio's ships are lost, Shylock demands the letter of his bond be honored, and the case goes to the court, because taking a pound of Antonio's flesh is a tantamount. It is equivalent to murder. Antonio's flesh is tantamount to murder. Shylock loses his case, and as a punishment for seeking to kill Antonio, he must forfeit. Forfeit means he must lose, or he must be deprived of his fortune. And not only he has to deprive from his fortune, but he has to convert to Christianity. Jessica. Jessica is Shylock's beloved daughter. Jessica's father, Shylock, has protected and sheltered his only child throughout her life. He limits her contact with the outside world, and Jessica feels stifled. She feels quiet, silent, and suffocated by his overprotection, by his father's overprotection. Despite Shylock's efforts and protection, Jessica meets and falls in love with Lorenzo, a Christian. Her father would forbid the match and punish her even talking with Lorenzo, so she disguises herself, takes as much of her father's wealth as she can carry, and elopes with Lorenzo in the middle of the night. At the end of the play, the couple meets at Belmont with Portia, Bassanio, Nerissa, and Gratiano. Next character is character of Lorenzo. Lorenzo is a friend of Bassanio as well as Gratiano. He falls in love with Jessica and elopes with her. Tubal is Shylock's fellow moneylender and his friend too, and he also updates him. Tubal also updates Shylock about Tubal is Shylock's fellow moneylender and friend, and he updates him about Jessica's activities after elopement. Launcelot Gobbo. Launcelot Gobbo is Shylock's jester. Jester means comic character or clown, and he is playing the character of a fool in this comedy. He is tired of his employers, who was Shylock. He was tired of his employers' abuses and goes to work for Bassanio as a servant. He is the wisest character of the play. Old Gobbo. Old Gobbo is Launcelot's elderly blind father who convinces his son to leave Shylock's employ and work for Bassanio. Duke of Venice. When Antonio defaults on his loan, Shylock demands payment of a pound of flesh, and the Duke of Venice must preside over the trial that ensues, that follows, that has to succeed. Next character is the character of Prince of Morocco. The Prince of Morocco is the first of Portia's suitors to accept her father's riddle challenge. He chooses the wrong casket and fails. Prince of Aragon was the second of Portia's suitor to accept her father's riddle challenge, and he also selects the wrong casket and fails. Okay, Celerino and Celanio both were Antonio's fellow merchants in Venice. Celerio. Celerio is a Venetian messenger who comes to Belmont to tell Bassanio about Antonio, that Antonio has forfeited on the loan. Dr. Bilario. Dr. Bilario is Portia's cousin, a law scholar from Padua who supplies Portia with letters of introduction and clothing to gain admission to the court in Venice. We never see him in the play. He was Portia's relative and an expert in law. As we never see him in the play, but he sends a letter instead. As you can see in the picture, there are letters and Duke of Venice. Okay, so that was all about the characters, and now moving on to the themes. As you can see in the picture, there are 8 themes in The Merchant of Venice. That is the theme of race, wealth, friendship, marriage, justice, love, isolation, and theme of choices. So taking start with the theme of race, in The Merchant of Venice, as I have explained this thing earlier as well, that Judaism and Christianity are not just religions. They were constructed as racial and even national identities as well. In this portrayal of a bloodthirsty Jewish moneylender, Shylock, the play famously dramatizes 16th century racial stereotypes. There was racism in that time. Next is the theme of wealth. Money is a very big deal in this play. In such of The Merchant of Venice, the character's attitude towards wealth, mercantilism is a theory related to the exchange of goods for profit. mercantilism, mercantilism. It is a theory related to the exchange of goods for profit. And usury mean lending money with interest. These both function as a way to differentiate between Christians and Jews. The Christians in the play are portrayed as generous and even careless with their fortunes, The money-grubbing Shylock, on the other hand, is accused of caring more for his ducats than human relationships. Money-grubbing Shylock, on the other hand, is accused of caring more for his ducats than human relationships. Next theme is the theme of friendship. Antonio loves Bassanio enough to give his life for him. Indeed, it seems that Bassanio's pursuits, his quests of a wife, is the cause of Antonio's deep melancholy. That was the cause of Antonio's deep sadness, which may suggest that his affection for his friend is romantic in nature. The merchant of Venice is interested in the dynamics of male friendship, a bond that's often valued above all other relationships. In the end, though, the Merchant of Venice is Shakespearean comedy, which means that Bassanio's marriage to Portia replaces his romance with Antonio. Antonio's sadness at the beginning of the play stems from his affection for Bassanio, who is too busy in wife hunting to pay attention to his friend's melancholy. Bassanio loves Antonio more than his wife, which is why he runs off to Antonio's trial immediately after his wedding. Theme of marriage. Marriage is portrayed in several different ways in The Merchant of Venice. Number one, as a risky business venture, as a risky business project, a mythological quest. Here it is referring to Portia, a chance for an unhappy daughter to escape her father's home, which refers to Jessica, who wants to escape from her father's home. A way for a father to transfer his wealth to the man of his choosing, which refers to Portia and his father. Okay, next is the theme of justice. Self-interest versus love. On the surface, the main difference between the Christian characters and Shylock, a Jew, appears to be that the Christian characters value human relationships over business ones, whereas Shylock is only interested in money. The Christian characters certainly view the matter this way. Merchants like Antonio lend money free of interest and put themselves at risk for those they love, whereas Shylock agonizes over the loss of his money and is reported to run through the streets after his daughter's elopement, crying, "Oh my ducats, oh my daughter." With these words, he apparently values his money at least as much as his daughter, suggesting that his greed outweighs his love. The conflict between Shylock and the Christian characters come to a head over the issue of mercy. The other characters acknowledge that the law is on Shylock's side, but they all expect him to show mercy, which he refuses to do. He was merciless. When during the trial, Shylock asks Portia what could possibly compel him to be merciful. Portia's long reply, beginning with the words, "The quality of mercy is not strained," clarifies that what is at stake in the argument. Human beings should be merciful because God is merciful. Mercy is an attribute of God Himself and therefore greater than power, majesty, or law. Next is the theme of isolation, the second last theme. The most potent, the most strong, or you can say the most powerful isolation is caused by religious estrangement. Estrangement means hostility, resentment. Shylock is isolated because he is Jewish. His religious beliefs and cultural values remain fundamentally at odds with those of his fellow Venetians. Antonio is isolated by his relationship with Bassanio. Their interaction seems to be defined and limited by what could be romantic love on Antonio's part. Isolation is a fact of life for the characters, and it proves to be fairly insurmountable. Last theme is the theme of choices. The explicit choices like Portia's casket lottery provide a fame for the entire play. The game to win Portia's hand is explicitly means clearly built on the choice of her suitors. Bassanio is faced with choosing correctly. He chooses the right casket. Now, which casket he chooses, that I am not going to tell you now. We will find it out later on. There are more abstract choices in the play as well. Antonio must choose between preserving his personal happiness as Bassanio's closest friend and enabling Bassanio to win a woman who will come between them. And not only this, Shylock chooses to follow his pound of Antonio's flesh, because Antonio, among others, has chosen to treat him like a dog. He treats him very badly in the beginning of the play. Mercy is a choice that all of the characters could have made in order to resolve tensions, because none of them ever chooses to be merciful. They constantly fall victim to each other's plots. Okay, with this we end with the themes. Reality and idealism. The Merchant of Venice is structured partly on the contrast between idealistic and realistic opinions. There are two opinions in The Merchant of Venice, which are idealistic and realistic opinion about society and relationships. On one hand, the play tells us that love is more important than money. Mercy is preferable to revenge, and love lasts forever. On the other hand, more cynical means pessimistic, suspicious. On the other hand, more cynical voices tells us that money rules the world. Mercy alone cannot govern our lives, and love can evaporate after marriage. The play switches abruptly between these different attitudes. Shakespeare organizes the shifts between idealism and realism by associating the two concepts with the play's two locations, that was Venice and Belmont. Venice is depicted as a city of merchants, usurers. Usurer mean charging interest on borrowed money, and cynical young men. So you got it. Venice is depicted as a city of merchants, usurers, and cynical young men. Whereas Belmont, in contrast, is the land where fairy tales come true and romance exists. Okay, that was all about today's lecture. Now moving on to today's task. Your task is to jot down every detail provided to you in the previous and today's lecture about the background of the play, plot and its components, characters and their detail, a little detail of the characters that has been given to you in the lecture in the form of notes. Hope everything is clear to you. Even if there is any problem, you can contact me in the group or in person. I will further assist you. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.